Okay, we're going to be replacing the keel cable for my 1984 Catalina 22. Everything you're going to need some 2x4s, some 2x6s, some cheap carpet, a jack. That's going to be preparation to lift it up so that you can lift it and shim it on the trailer. And then you're going to need a 14mm socket, a 14mm wrench, a 6mm socket, and a Phillips and Flathead screwdriver. So make sure you have all those things before you start. And then of course some materials we'll be replacing it with. So we got her shimmed up, and then the old keel cable mount, we went ahead and got under there and took that off. It was kind of odd. You could see where the cable broke right at the connector, and the guy had a D-shackle. That was kind of interesting. Won't be putting that back in there, but we'll be pocketing it for later. It's still in pretty good shape. Alright, in the boat we're going to be taking the trim off. So you'll just need to take off this one piece of trim. That's 2 Phillips head screws. And then once you get that out, you'll have a hider board, is what I like to call it. Very official term. To cover up the actual crank mechanism. It's more to keep anything from accidentally going into it for whatever reason. So there'll be 2 Phillips head screws on those also. And then you'll need to get the crank handle itself out of the way. If you look to the right of that crank, you can see that silver hair sticking out where a cable is supposed to be. 2 flathead screws on the hose clamps. Take those out. I suggest a twisting motion for that hose. Came right off. It's just on a bronze connector. Don't worry about putting silicone or anything. You're going to have 2 hose clamps on there anyway. That does plenty. You know, tighten it down. Just don't over tighten it. Alright, so we have like a roller ball. It acts like a little block in there. Gives the cable a runner. Keep her true. So I suggest putting the cable down in there, put some pressure on it, wiggle it, and the pin will come right out. Get the pin started with like a little screw or something, but be careful. You don't want that thing to fall down. And the cable does a good job. It's nice and stiff, especially the new one. It's not going to bother it. Just stick it down through there. A little bit of pressure keeps it from falling. And obviously it's the perfect size for the groove. I had to take a look because I really thought that there would be something. I don't know what I was expecting, but it really is just a hole that goes straight down to the keel connection. So very important that you have those hose clamps and things in place. Otherwise you just have a hole in your boat. So we are going to drop the new keel cable down. And this is a one-person thing. You can just drop it down the hole. Not very much of the cable is actually down there. That actually ended up being plenty of length that I just dropped. And then Catalina Direct sends a pretty cool wire. Just very convenient. What you're going to do is you're going to wrap that through the groove of that runner ball, so that you can hold it while you put the new pin in. Be very certain to run the cable on the forward side, the bow side, the front side, the closest to you side of that ball. You will destroy the bottom of your boat, rip your cable, ruin the hose. It could get all marred up if you run it on the back side. You want that cable to be coming from the keel through the forward side of that ball, and then for it to run back slightly to where the crank is. And you'll see whenever you put the hose on, there's actually a very slight bend to the hose. Make sure that you align that hose towards the crank. I cannot express this enough. It's very important. and it's something small that you can end up in a bad spot. And I like to align my hose clamps the same way, just for convenience. 2 flatheads again. Just keep them a small space between them on that brass mount. Just don't over tighten them. You don't have to add silicone or anything there. Alright, we're underneath. Like I said, that ended up being the perfect distance. It's very close. You're going to hold it with one hand. You just lay on your back on the ground, get it over with, and run that pin through. I've been carrying the cotter pin in my mouth because otherwise I would lose it. You're going to run that cotter pin through and then use some needle nose pliers is what I use. Other people, they might be able to just do it with their hands. But those little things are very stiff for how tiny they are, and they will stab you. So keep it nice and flat, move it out the way. These keels do operate on a forward pivot pin. It's not the tightest tolerances in the world, so it could wiggle a little bit. You want to make sure that you have that pin bent out of the way so that it's not getting caught in the cable or getting caught on the side of the slot. So you don't want it getting pinched in any way, essentially. So we're back up in the boat. We're going to take the crank off itself. Now that the cable's ran, you're going to have that 14mm socket and the 14mm wrench. The keeper nut on the back, you're going to hold that in place. Just ratchet it off. Be careful whenever you pull it out. The bolt on the front is the only thing holding that crank in place. I knew that, and it still almost fell. So be careful with that. Now, if that's out the way, we're going to take a 6mm and undo the 2 keeper nuts for the cable keeper. Pull that right out, and then you can see where this thing definitely got jammed up on the trailer. It traveled a couple 100 miles. So a couple of bumpy roads here and there. It looks like it just kind of locked up on itself. Had a little bit too much slack. But that's okay. It needed replacing anyway. The guy that I bought the boat from took fantastic care of it. He just told me he didn't know how old the cable was. So I said, well, everything else on it's pretty much new, so I can do that myself. Whenever you roll that new cable on, I suggest getting into the cockpit. It is pretty long. You want to make sure that you keep it somewhat taut while you're rolling it on there. Leave a little bit of a gap. Don't run it right to the edge of that crank. You want to keep a little space on the ends and run it to the second side, like the second layer. And then be very careful whenever you roll that on. You want to kind of create a memory in the cable so that it runs back into the place it needs to go. So we rolled it all the way down, and then now we're going to be putting that keeper back on. Again, you want this thing nice and snug. You can see where it's just barely deforming the cable itself in the keeper. You don't want to do it any more than that, because then you create a pinch point. You could weaken the fibers. So you want it nice and tight, but just don't over tighten. Put that bolt back in place. And then before you put the keeper nut on the back, hold the crank in place, and you're going to put the crank handle back on. We want to lock that crank in place so that we can tighten it down while we keep a little bit of tension on that cable. Alright, so it's locked in place, so now we can put that keeper nut on the back. And once she's back on, you're good to go. You just need to double check, make sure everything's working properly. And from there, gotta put the trim and all the fancy stuff back in place. Thanks.